She rose from the fog with one rifle and steady eyes. Below her, a SEAL team was trapped by unseen shooters 2 kilometers away. She didn't ask who was in command. She simply keyed her radio and said, "I've got the distance." You're watching The Storyscape, cinematic stories of hidden courage and quiet professionals. Where are you watching from tonight? Let us know in the comments. Morning crept over the Afghan highlands like a cold breath. The fog hadn't lifted. It just thinned enough to reveal the valley floor, where a 12-man SEAL unit lay pinned behind shattered rock. Bullets cracked from somewhere above, invisible and precise, carving the dirt inches from their helmets. Sergeant Mara Lorne adjusted the hood of her wind-scoured jacket. She'd been alone in the mountains for 3 days, sent in under a compartmented tasking: observe, report, never engage. But when she heard panic bleed through the net, the rule book shrank to a single page. She crawled onto a frozen ledge, flipped open the legs of her .338 precision rifle, and pressed the stock into her shoulder. The scope's glass turned chaos into geometry: angles, vapor trails, drifting haze. Through it, she saw nothing, but she felt everything: wind pressure on her cheek, the subtle drift of fog threads, the tremor of distant gunfire. Below, Kepler glanced at his second-in-command, Chief Dane Rourke. "If they keep the angle, we can't even return fire," he said. "Then pray whoever's on Overwatch knows we're dying down here." The radio snapped to life, a woman's voice, level and calm. "Ground unit, stay put. I have eyes on your ridgeline. Hold for my mark." Kepler froze. "Identify yourself." "Mara Lorne, Independent Overwatch. 2 shooters, top shelf." He looked at Rourke, who mouthed, "Who?" But before he could ask again, the first shot came, not at them, but for them. The sound reached the SEALs 3 seconds late. Somewhere high in the mist, a rifle had spoken once, and one of the enemy guns went silent. A heartbeat later, another. Kepler gripped the radio. "Overwatch confirm. 1 hostile neutralized, searching for the second." Rourke stared up at the gray blur of cliffs. "She's not even supposed to be here," he muttered. "Yeah, and I'm not complaining." Mara adjusted her dials. The wind shifted. Steady cross, 7 miles per hour. Rangefinder flashed 2,110 meters. She waited until the fog thinned to a whisper, caught a shimmer of movement, and squeezed the trigger. The recoil rolled through her bones like a heartbeat she trusted more than her own. Through the scope, a body collapsing into dust. "2 down," she said softly. "You're clear to move when I call it." The fog wasn't her enemy anymore. It was her camouflage, her ally, and her silence. Below, the SEALs gathered themselves. Relief felt strange after hours of fear. They checked weapons, patched a bleeding arm, and waited for the woman they'd never met to tell them it was time to live again. Mara scanned the compound ahead, a cluster of tan walls half hidden by smoke. Through her scope, she saw sentries shifting nervously, pointing toward the cliffs. They knew something unnatural had started hunting them. She tapped her radio once more. "Lieutenant, you move on my next shot. 60 seconds window." "Copy that. We're with you." The mist peeled away like a curtain. A single guard stepped into the open on a rooftop, rifle hanging loose. Mara exhaled halfway, steadied the crosshair, and fired. Down below, Kepler whispered, "That's our cue. Go!" The seals surged forward across the valley, shadows cutting through gray light, while the echo of her shot still floated in the air. On her scope's edge, she caught a flicker of heat, something longer than a rifle being lifted behind the compound wall. She realized it wasn't over. Someone down there was about to aim a rocket at the men she'd just saved. The rocket tube lifted like a question the mountain didn't want to answer. Through her scope, Marilorn saw the fighter shouldering it, fumbling for balance in the thin air above the compound wall. She didn't think, she measured. Range, 1,630 meters. Crosswind, 5 right to left. She dialed, breathed, and broke the trigger. The rifle bucked. 3 seconds later, the man folded backward in silence, the launcher spinning out of his hands and exploding harmlessly in the dirt. The echo reached her after the danger had already ended. "Overwatch to ground," she said. "RPG threat neutralized." "Copy," Lieutenant Kepler replied between breaths. His team was already halfway across the flats, moving fast and low, using the chaos she'd carved open. They reached the outer berm and fanned along the wall, boots scraping stone. Mara watched their every step, adjusting her position by inches to keep their advance inside her lens. She'd never met these men, but in that valley, their lives were coordinates she could not afford to lose. The compound stirred, doors slamming, figures shouting. One climbed to the roof with a machine gun sweeping arcs across the fog. Another leaned out a window with a radio handset, screaming into static. The morning had turned into mathematics again, and Mara worked fast. Range, 1480. Hold left. Fire. Adjust. Fire again. 2 more bodies dropped before the team even breached the wall. Inside her headset, Kepler's voice cut through. "Overwatch, we're in. Multiple hostiles inside the courtyard." "Copy. I'll keep your roof clear." She shifted her weight and scanned the rooftops. In the compound's heart, a bright sheet of muzzle flash answered her search. A fighter with an old DSHK heavy gun was cutting lines of fire through the air, sweeping dangerously close to the SEAL's entry point. Mara tracked the flash, found the barrel, and pressed the trigger once more. The heavy weapon stopped mid-scream. Down below, the men moved like a machine she was guiding from afar, one section covering, another clearing rooms. Smoke, gunfire, and distant thunder rolled into each other. For a moment, she let herself breathe. The math was holding. Precision was her language. Every shot was a sentence no one could argue with. She checked her ammo count. 6 rounds in the mag, 3 more in her pouch. Enough if she stayed perfect. The fog began to drift again, thicker now as the sun warmed the valley floor. Visibility dropped fast, her scope filled with gray, her world shrinking to sound alone. Boots running, muffled detonations, someone shouting "clear" through layers of stone. Then a deeper vibration rolled through the ridge, a second explosion, heavier than grenades. "Overwatch, this is Kepler," the voice snapped through static. "They blew the storage building. Secondary fire, ammo cooking off. We're pinned in the east section." Mara swept the glass toward the blaze. Orange heat pulsed through the smoke and figures darted between walls like sparks thrown by the fire. She caught one silhouette standing firm behind a mounted gun firing down into the courtyard. She adjusted elevation, sighted the faint outline through the waves of heat, and fired. The figure vanished into flame. "Overwatch, that was yours?" Kepler asked. "Affirmative. You have 30 seconds of quiet. Make 'em count." Down below, the SEALs moved positions, dragging a wounded teammate behind the inner wall. Mara could barely see them now, only the glint of helmets through ash-colored fog. The fire was spreading fast, and visibility was dying with it. She needed higher ground. She pulled the bolt, cleared the chamber, and crawled backward, sliding over ice-slick rock until she reached a new ledge with a better angle on the compound. The smoke rolled up the slope like a living thing, stinging her eyes. She settled again behind the rifle. For a few seconds, the view sharpened. The courtyard, the blaze, the men crouched in a pocket of safety. And then, movement. A truck, half buried in debris, lurching out from behind the north wall. Two men in the bed, one setting a mounted gun, one lighting it up. Mara's heart kicked once. The team below had no cover left, and the turret's barrel was already aligning on them. She spoke quickly into the radio. "Ground team, vehicle north wall, get down now!" But her own visibility was gone. Smoke, dust, and rising heat warped the sight picture until everything swam. She couldn't read wind, couldn't see detail. Just shadows and motion. She closed her left eye, steadied her breathing, and trusted the math she could no longer confirm. One shot, blind through chaos. The rifle cracked. The shot disappeared into gray. 3 seconds. 4. Nothing. Then, out of the smoke, came a flash of secondary explosion. Too bright, too close, and her radio erupted with static and a single half-cut word. Hit! The explosion tore through the compound like a heartbeat made of thunder. A black column of smoke punched skyward, swallowing rooftops and turning the valley into a gray bowl of echoes. Through the distortion, Mara Lorne pressed her cheek back to the rifle and scanned for signs of life. Static filled her headset, crackling, then silence, then a burst of coughing and shouting. "Overwatch, Kepler here. 2 down, 1 wounded. We're inside the east wall, visibility near 0. Mara wiped soot off her lens and blinked through the rising haze. Her ridge was now half choked by the smoke plume. Wind carried the chemical sting of burning fuel. The scope showed only flashes, muzzle bursts, blurred figures moving between walls, shadows climbing stairs that might not exist. She switched to thermal. The view bloomed into ghostly shapes, men outlined in white heat, flickering through walls of gray. The system lagged a second behind real time, but it was enough. "Lieutenant, I've got your location. 3 tangos moving from the north barracks toward you." "Copy that," Kepler answered, voice clipped. "We're holding until the medic stabilizes Rourke." Mara recalculated the line of fire. She had to shoot at a downward angle, through thin smoke, with almost no wind data. It wasn't accuracy anymore. It was intuition, sharpened by 1,000 hours of calculation. She lined up on the first target and squeezed. Through the haze, a figure dropped. 2 more followed in quick rhythm. "Threat neutralized," she said. "You're clear on the north side." For a few moments, the only sound was fire chewing through timber. Then, faint at first, came the metallic growl of an engine. She shifted the scope. Out beyond the compound fence, half hidden by smoke, a pickup truck was cutting across the slope. In the bed, another heavy gun. Whoever commanded these fighters wasn't done yet. She reached for the radio. "Kepler, enemy vehicle approaching your west gate. 2 gunners on board." "Copy. We're moving to cover." Mara checked her ammo. 3 rounds left. The shot was long, 1,900 meters, and the air between was chaos. She adjusted elevation and fired once. Miss. The bullet vanished into vapor. Second round, low impact, a spray of dirt near the tire. Third round, she centered the scope on the gunner's chest and let the mountain's breath do the rest. The man crumpled. The truck kept coming. She had nothing left to fire. Skill meant nothing without time, and time was bleeding out.
Mara slammed open her pack, grabbed a fresh mag, and reloaded in seconds. She rolled sideways off the ledge, sprinting along the ridge to a new position before the smoke gave her away. The ridge underfoot was loose shale, each step loud, each movement a betrayal. She set up again, heart hammering too fast, but the scope image steadied her pulse the way it always did. The truck reached the outer gate. Through the glass, she saw one fighter jump out with a satchel, explosives. He ducked low, planting it against the wall. Overwatch to ground. Breach imminent, west gate. Kepler's reply was half drowned in static. Understood. Evac path. Negative. You're boxed unless you move east. The charge detonated. Stone chunks flew outward. Smoke belched through the courtyard. Through the gap, more fighters poured in. 6, maybe 8. Mira started shooting again, controlled and slow. Every shot bought the SEAL seconds. Every second felt like a heartbeat she might not get back. Down below, Kepler dragged Rourke toward the opposite wall, shouting orders she couldn't hear. The medic's pack trailed a ribbon of blood. Mira could barely see them now, just movement amid flame. She switched back to visual, blinked hard against the sweat and smoke in her eyes. Then a flare burst above the compound, washing everything in orange light. For one brief instant, she saw the entire map of chaos, friend and foe frozen mid-action. 2 SEALs behind cover, one enemy on the roof aiming down, another sprinting toward the wounded with a knife in hand. She took the roof first, 1 shot, gone. Then the runner, 1 more, cut down before he reached them. Kepler's voice came back, breathless. Overwatch, we're moving east. Extraction point Bravo. Can you cover us? Affirmative. I've got you. Mara slung her pack, rifle still hot, and started descending the ridge. Every step she lost altitude, she lost her advantage, but it didn't matter. The valley was burning, the smoke rolling upward like a tide, and her team needed a closer guardian now. She reached the lower outcrop, dropped to prone, and scanned the escape route. Kepler's men were ghosts moving through dust trails. Beyond them, half hidden by the firelight, was the extraction zone, a dried riverbed marked by flares. But something else moved there, something big. Through the heat shimmer, she saw the silhouette of a second truck, this one armored, turret-mounted, engine idling like a growl that had been waiting for its cue. The gunners hadn't been retreating, they'd been waiting. And now, between her and the burning valley, that turret began to turn, straight toward the only path her team had left. The armored truck idled at the edge of the valley like a waiting animal. Its turret began to turn, sweeping the smoke as if sniffing for prey. From her new perch, Mira Lorne tracked the slow rotation through her scope, counting the rhythm between pauses. It was deliberate, professional. Whoever was behind that weapon wasn't a panicked fighter. They were trained.
Down below, Lieutenant Kepler's voice came in sharp bursts. Overwatch, we're boxed. Vehicle west, heavy gunner, no cover on the approach. Copy, she replied. Stay behind the wall. I'll handle it. She knew that tone in his voice, the same one she'd once heard in her own years ago, when the math didn't add up and the world suddenly demanded perfection. The turret's gunner stood high in the hatch, scanning through the smoke. The rest of the vehicle was half hidden by rubble. Mara measured the range, 1840 meters, wind steady from the south. The problem wasn't the distance, it was the armor. At that angle, her rounds would punch through little but pride. She needed a soft point, a weak seam between steel and flesh. The mountain offered no mercy and no better angle. If she wanted to save them, she'd have to move. Mara broke from cover, jogging along the ridgeline until her lungs burned. The rifle clattered against her vest with every step. Gravel slid out from under her boots, echoing like distant thunder. She dropped behind a boulder, set the bipod, and found the target again. The turret was now fully turned toward the extraction zone, right where the SEALs would have to cross. She chambered around, exhaled through her teeth, and waited. The gunner leaned forward to adjust the mount. There, the exposed throat under the helmet rim. She fired. The bullet reached him before the sound did. His body snapped back, and the turret froze in mid-rotation. Kepler came through on comms. Impact confirmed. He's down. Not done, she said. The vehicle's still live. The driver slammed the gear. The truck lurched forward, roaring across the slope directly toward the SEAL's position. She fired again, hitting the windshield, but the bullet deflected. She aimed for the tire. No luck. The vehicle kept grinding forward, heavy and unstoppable. She didn't have the ammo to waste. One round left in the mag. She'd need to end it with that. Sometimes precision wasn't enough. You needed audacity. Her brain moved faster than the smoke. She scanned the terrain, found the incline leading to a ledge stacked with loose boulders. If she couldn't destroy the truck, maybe she could bury it. She adjusted elevation, aimed not at the vehicle, but at the slope above it, and squeezed. The shot fractured the rock line. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the mountain exhaled. Tons of stone loosened and crashed down the incline, smashing into the vehicle with a sound that swallowed everything else. The turret bent sideways, the engine screamed, then choked out. "Overwatch, what the hell was that?" Kepler's voice rang with disbelief. "Call it creative ballistics," she said. He laughed once, a raw edge in it. "You just saved us twice in one morning. Make it count. Get your wounded out. Bravo zone still viable." The men began to move again, shadows darting through flame. She could finally see them reaching the outer slope, heading for the extraction point, just beyond what was left of the smoke. For the first time in hours, the valley began to quiet. The math was over. But quiet never lasted long out here. As she packed her gear, the wind shifted east, carrying a low mechanical thrum. Faint at first, but growing. A sound she hadn't heard since a different lifetime. A helicopter. Not American. Her jaw clenched. She knew that rhythm, that ugly stutter of the rotors. An old Soviet M1817, modified and angry. Through her binoculars, she saw it rise from behind the ridge to the north, gun pods glinting in the sunlight. "Kepler, incoming air contact. How bad? Big enough to ruin extraction." The SEALs were already running, heat-hazed figures sprinting across the valley floor. The helicopter banked, dipping its nose like a hawk locking on to prey. Mara slid back behind her rifle, chambered a fresh round, and steadied her breathing. The target was moving fast, the wind unpredictable, and she was nearly out of ammunition. She had 3 rounds left, and a sky full of problems. The Mi-17 dropped its nose and opened fire. Tracers raked the valley, tearing through smoke and rock. The extraction flare went dark, and her radio went dead. The Mi-17 swept through the canyon like a hammer made of air. Its rotor shredded the fog, throwing dust clouds across the valley. From her ridge, Mara Lorne watched the helicopter bank hard, gun pods flaring orange. Tracer lines stitched across the ground, kicking up dirt and stone where the SEALs had been seconds earlier. Her radio was dead, static drowned by the roar. She could see Lieutenant Kepler's team sprinting toward the dry riverbed that marked the extraction point, dragging one wounded man between them. Every pass the gunship made drew closer, braver. It wasn't searching, it was hunting. Mara checked her rifle. 3 rounds left. No backup, no comms, and a helicopter armed with rockets and 12.7mm cannons between her and the men she refused to lose. She rolled onto her stomach, found a new firing position, and started to think like the pilot. The aircraft had to come around again for another pass. Same approach line, same angle. That was its weakness. Predictability. The ridge trembled as the helicopter curved wide, rotor wash shaking pebbles from her perch. She tracked it through her scope, distance just over 2,000 meters, descending fast. The pilot was trying to maintain line of sight on the fleeing soldiers. She whispered to herself, "Keep coming, just a little lower." The reticle drifted across the cockpit glass. Shooting a helicopter at that range was madness, a bullet against a fortress of speed and armor. But Mara had made a career of turning impossible into inevitable.
She waited until the nose dropped, the gunner exposed in the open hatch, and squeezed. The recoil slammed her shoulder. The bullet vanished into the blur of rotors. For a heartbeat, nothing changed. Then the gunner slumped forward, lifeless. The side weapons stopped firing. The helicopter wobbled but kept moving. Not enough, she muttered, cycling the bolt. Courage wasn't noise. It was the ability to stay precise when the sky was screaming. The Me-17 corrected its pitch, swinging around for another run. Angrier now, closer. The mountain echoed with the metallic howl of rotors. Mara sighted again, exhaled, and aimed higher. Her second shot hit the front canopy, spiderwebbing the glass. The pilot flinched, veering off course. Down below, the SEALs reached the riverbed. She saw them waving smoke grenades, red for friendly, but from above, it might as well have been a target. The gunship banked again, aligning for a third pass. Mara dug into her vest for the last round. Her hands were steady, though the ridge beneath her knees trembled with each gust. She whispered to the rifle, "One left. Make it count." She watched the helicopter's pattern, turn, level, nose down, fire. Always the same. She angled her scope slightly ahead of its flight path, compensating for velocity, distance, and the spin drift that would drag the round off target. She felt the rhythm between her breath and the machine's roar. When the cockpit aligned with the edge of her crosshairs, she fired. The bullet disappeared into distance. For almost 4 seconds, there was only wind. Then, impact. The helicopter jerked sideways, rotors clipping the canyon wall. A chain of sparks sprayed out as metal met stone. The aircraft twisted, nose first, into the slope. A muffled explosion rolled through the valley, like closing a door. Mara stayed in the scope, watching smoke bloom from the wreck. Her rifle's barrel shimmered with heat. She exhaled once, slow and deep. The SEALs kept running, silhouettes swallowed by dust and relief. The airstrike they feared had just been canceled by a single bullet. Mara lay back against the rock, staring at the fading column of smoke. Her hands trembled now that it was safe to shake. She reached for her radio again, still static. No confirmation, no thanks, just the endless hum of interference. She smiled faintly. Silence was fine. Silence was familiar. She began packing her gear, rifle first, then scope, then the notebook where she logged each shot. Her fingers paused over the page. 11 kills confirmed, 1 helicopter, 3 days alone. The sound of approaching rotors made her freeze. For an instant she thought another Me-17 was coming, but this one sounded different, sharper, controlled. She stood, wind whipping her hair across her face, and saw a dark silhouette cresting the horizon, a twin-engine bird, American markings, inbound fast. The extraction chopper. She keyed the radio again, hoping for a signal. "Bravo team, if you can hear me. Inbound friendlies. Your window is 60 seconds. No reply. But she saw movement below. Kepler's team waving flares, marking their position. The new chopper descended, kicking up dust, doors open and waiting. For the first time, she allowed herself a small breath of satisfaction. The mission had survived. They all had. Or so she thought. From the corner of her eye, Mara saw motion on the far ridge, a flash of light not from the sun, but from glass. A sniper's glint. Someone else had been watching this whole time.
and they just found her. The flash of glass was the only warning, one cold blink of sunlight from the opposite ridge, clean, perfect, deliberate. Mara dropped behind a slab of rock before thought could catch up. Dust scattered across her hands as another round snapped past, shattering stone where her head had been. Someone else had been watching, patient, disciplined, waiting for her to save everyone else before taking the shot meant for her. She exhaled slowly, forcing her heartbeat down. Find, range, adjust, survive. The old rhythm returned. She rolled left, belly to the ground, crawling through grit until she reached a new line of sight. The valley was quiet again. Even the rotor noise had faded. Only the wind spoke, brushing smoke across the slopes. Through her scope, nothing but gray air and rock, but she trusted the memory of that glint. It had come from 1,800 meters, maybe more. She lifted her rangefinder and swept in slow arcs. There, a shape too straight for nature, the faint curve of a rifle barrel, the shine of optics half buried in grass. Whoever it was, they were good, but they had moved just enough. She dialed the range 1860, wind 3 east. One clean breath. The trigger broke. The shot went silent into distance. 3 seconds later, the target slumped sideways. No flash, no smoke, just a human outline folding back into the mountain. She waited motionless. No counterfire. No echo but her own pulse. It was over. In the end, silence always wins. She stayed behind the rifle until her hand stopped shaking, then began packing up with ritual precision. Bolt, scope, notebook. Below, the extraction bird lifted off, the seals now small dark figures against the burned valley. Her radio hissed to life, faint through static. Overwatch, we're clear. You still with us? She pressed transmit. Still here, leaving no trace. The line went quiet again, this time by choice. She slung the rifle, took one last look at the sky she'd fought against, and started down the ridge. The camera lingers where she'd been. Empty rock, 3 shell casings glinting in sun, wind sweeping them into the dust until even their shine disappears. Then nothing but mountains and the slow return of peace.